Hey, what's up, everybody? It's BDF44 coming at you with another video. So, as I promised, I'm going to keep giving you these rosters, each and every team that I can possibly muster up. And today is the Miami Heat. So, this is what we got going for Miami. Well, if you're going to talk about the Miami Heat, the very first name you're going to mention is Pat Riley. You're not going to talk about no players, you're not going to talk about no coaches. You're going to talk about Pat Riley. He is the guy that makes this thing go. He is the top of the food chain. He is the head honcho. He's the guy. And what he says goes. The culture that he set in stone is that of a championship culture. Two different eras in the matter of the last 15 years. They have won championships. Two with LeBron James, one with Shaq and Dwayne Wade as well. And let me tell you, Dwayne Wade was a part of all of those. So you got to give credit to the Miami Heat. The Heat are a A1 organization, and they have had some days away from contention, but they were in the NBA Finals 2 years ago against my Los Angeles Lakers in the bubble. Jimmy Butler put up some legendary numbers, but they fell short to my team. We won, and they've been trying to figure out how they can get back there. 1 year away was too long for them, so they put together a team that they believe can get back to the NBA Finals, or at least compete with the Brooklyn Nets. And we'll see what I have to say about that. We'll see my opinion on that. But for now, let's just get into this roster. First off, Bam Adebayo. Bam Adebayo is the first name I mention when I talk about this Miami Heat roster because he is the centerpiece. No pun intended. Starting center of this team can do a little bit of everything. You love centers like him because not only is he gifted on the offensive side of the ball, having somewhat like guard skills, including being able to pass the rock, shoot the ball, all types of good stuff that you want him to do, continuing to add new things to his game. That's another thing that's special about this guy. But the defensive side of the ball, just as elite. He's one of the top defenders in all of basketball. Had a legendary block in the NBA Finals. Or was that the Eastern Conference Finals? I don't exactly remember, but I know it was a legendary block. I thought it was the Finals. This dude is phenomenal regardless. You have to understand that Bam Adebayo is somebody who's only going to continue to get better. He's already made all-star teams. And I think his upside, as I've said about other players, is the moon. I don't think there is a cap on this individual's upside. You know, because of his skill sets, because of how fluent of a player he is. There's really just it's up to him and health about what it is that he's able to do and produce and how far he's willing to take it with his work. Because it's and for guys like him, in my opinion, it's not really about regular season stuff. I look at him as one of those performers where it's like I'm not really interested in what you did in regular season, to be honest with you. You're a playoff performer. You're a guy who I'm going to be looking at to see how many rings you collect at the end of this thing. That's the kind of guy I look at Bam Adebayo. He's in that elk of players like Jokic and Embiid, Anthony Davis, Karl Towns. Bam Adebayo is one of those guys, and even though he doesn't get mentioned as one of those guys, he isn't a tier below them. He's just for whatever reason not mentioned. But he's already been in an NBA Finals. He's already made All-Star team. And this is somebody who's going to continue to get it done. I think he can make a Defensive Player of the Year award out of this thing at some point too. He's that kind of player. So I know a lot of people will say Jimmy Butler's the star on this team. Not in my mind. In my mind, it's the young center that they have, Bam Adebayo. That's the most valuable piece on this roster, in my humble opinion. But they have a very close second in that Jimmy Butler, and he ain't nobody to play with. Make no mistake about it. I ain't here to say nothing negative about Jimmy Butler either. He's one of the toughest, grittiest superstars in basketball. And he put up legendary numbers, as I've stated in this video, in the finals against the Lakers. And when I say legendary, nothing short. Some of the best stuff you ever seen. Triple doubles, 40 points. This guy was going nutty. And gave it his all. They just didn't have enough talent on the floor at the time. They had a lot of injuries, things of that nature. Just a depleted team during that stage of the bubble. And for him to play that well at that stage in the game, when everybody had already been away from their family for many, many months in that bubble, guys had been isolated and out of their comfort zone to the highest degree in some ways. Jimmy Butler, at the end, in a losing effort, was putting up better numbers than anybody else. So that's what I know about Jimmy Butler, and he's a guy on this team, that many consider the star. As I said, Bam Adebayo in my mind, but Jimmy Butler is considered the consensus number one guy on this roster. And to be honest with you, I don't see any reason for him to not have a big time season. The thing about Jimmy, of course, is just with everyone else, health permitting. He's had some injury issues here and there throughout his career, some issues getting along with certain players, things of that nature. But none of those problems have followed him to Miami. Miami's the place he's been trying to get to for the longest, and since he's been there, it's been success. They've done a good job of keeping him in contention, and this year they're going to be doing just that once again. So Jimmy's the man. What you want me to say? Jimmy's the man. There's not a whole lot he can't do. He's not known as a three-point shooter, but don't leave him alone. He's not known as a guy who's going to get many assists, but he'll make a lot of assists happen if he needs to. He'll make his players around him better. So he's just a super fluent player, and because they have those two players at the top, they're going to be one of the best teams in the NBA this year. But that's not all they have. Yeah, there's another star that they got in this mix too. They just picked up a guy that a lot of people wanted from Toronto, NBA champion Kyle Lowry, who's made a bunch of all-star teams as well. This guy, he can do it all. He's a bit older at this stage. I think he's in his mid-30s, but he's definitely somebody who doesn't have his game predicated on his speed, doesn't have his game predicated on athleticism. He can do what he does on the ground. He's a facilitator. He's a lethal expert shooter, and somebody who can drop a lot of points on your head to go along with a lot of everything else. Many people have considered him a Chris Paul type of player. Chris Paul kind of light. I would agree with that. He's better than that, though. You don't want to call him light. He's an all-star in his own right, but to the level of Chris Paul, he's under it. But they do some of the same things. He's an excellent pick and roll player. He will pick you apart with a big man, create plays, make other people better, that kind of stuff. Injuries are the story, like with so many other players. Can Kyle Lowry stay healthy? He did not finish the season last year, but he was playing for a Toronto team that was displaced, having had to move to Tampa Bay due to COVID and stuff like that. They were not a winning basketball team. They got Fred VanVleet in there. They got Flynn over there. They got all kinds of point guards. So they were kind of looking to more or less sit him and not really risk him any further than necessary, being that he was an expiring contract of value and things of that nature. They had those young players. So I think if they were in the playoffs, if this was a final situation or something like that, he'd have been out there running around. But being that they didn't necessarily have to play him, they just shut him down. So that's natural. That happens a lot. But yeah, that's Kyle Lowry, man. He's going to add a lot to this team, obviously, with his championship experience, his point guard ability. He's going to make things a lot easier for those other guys out there. What I definitely like about him, what he brings to this table particularly, is that facilitating the basketball. They had Dragic running down there last year. I think he's an upgrade there, particularly in that area. So I definitely like Kyle Lowry being added to this roster. I had to give up quite a bit to get him, though. You know, that sign and trade was not the cheapest thing in the world. But, you know, they have an NBA champion point guard here, so they'll be happy. Next name up, Victor Oladipo. Now, Victor Oladipo is a player who's had a lot of injury issues over the years, even though he's a star player in this league. We know Victor Oladipo from Orlando originally made his name defensively and athletically. Fantastic dunker, definitely a fantastic steals guy. But then he started to bring his game along in terms of shooting the ball. His shot became a thing, and he made an all-star team. And from there, kind of had a bad injury situation with Indiana, stopping OKC. That kind of was derailed by the frustration of KD leaving. They thought they were going to be bringing in a super team that can win the entire championship, and KD darted to Golden State, and the rest is history. Kind of left Victor Oladipo in a no-man's land type of situation, initially coming off of an all-star caliber tenure with Orlando. Goes straight to OKC. Now he's playing with Russell Westbrook in a situation where clearly they don't fit with one another because neither one of them shoot. So that was a nightmare situation for Victor Oladipo. Landing there, it derailed his career quite a bit. And ever since then, he's been trying to find his way to Miami. Well, he's found his way to Miami, but he's not the player he was at that time because of the injuries. So at this point, it's just about how much can he give you. Last year, he played for the Houston Rockets, showed some signs of life, but then injuries took over once again. That situation was in a similar situation as Toronto, so they shut him down. You didn't see him again, that kind of thing. You don't really know what he's going to bring to the table. But you know that there is no expectations or pressure on him to play at all, let alone be the old Victor Oladipo. They got plenty of guards, and they got guys on this team to where they don't necessarily need him to be himself. Now, I do look at this roster and I say they have some question marks, some old guys, things of that nature we'll get into. So it would help if Victor Oladipo steps back in and plays like his old self. But the pressure for him to do that right away is not necessarily there. So it's a good situation. They can bring him along slowly, and that's important. So next name up, Duncan Robinson. Now, I've been hearing rumors about them possibly looking to trade him, which I don't believe, because if I'm not mistaken, they just paid him last year. Duncan Robinson is one of the more lethal, pure shooters that you ever find in this world. You know, he just simply has a pure shot. Reminds me of Klay Thompson in that way. Tall guy, just lets him fly. He ain't going to miss too much at all. But the problem is, he doesn't really do anything else. That's the problem. And if you listen to me talk, you know I don't really love players that don't have a lot of aspects to their game. If you can only do one or two things, you're probably not going to be a player I love that much. But because of how lethal of a shooter he is, he's going to always find opportunities to play. I think the problem with Duncan Robinson is, can he develop other areas of his basketball game to where teams and coaches feel good about playing him, or teams can feel good about acquiring him at whatever price he's going to be at? Because his contract is always going to be inflated because of his lethal shooting ability, but he's always going to be a liability in other areas just the same. So it's really, really tricky for Duncan Robinson. I wonder where he goes from here. I've seen him play great. I've also seen him disappear in key moments, particularly in the finals. That cannot happen. So Duncan Robinson's at a pivotal point in his career. I think he'll get a great role this year to show what he can do. But I want to see him do other things, rebound the ball, play some defense, just kind of, work on some of his weaknesses to kind of secure his role in this league going forward. Because even though pure shooters are at a premium right now, I think that more combination players, more guys with different aspects are coming in as better shooters. That's what you're seeing. You don't need these one-trick pony pure shooters anymore, because your combo guys, your dribble guys, these wiggly guys, they can also shoot 40%. So that makes it so that a guy like Duncan Robinson's value starts to decrease over time. We'll see how that goes, but that's just kind of how I wonder. That's kind of how I see this going. So we'll see how it goes. But for the meantime, Duncan Robinson's a big player on this team who's going to have a big role. Small forward, shooting guard, shooting threes. You know what it is. All right, Tyler Hero. Next name up. Young guy, really, really young. He might be 21. I don't even know if he's 21 yet. He's already played in the NBA Finals. He's already had some big moments in the playoffs. He's already shown us during key moments in the regular season that he has all-star caliber mechanics. A lot of sauce. That's what I always say with his game. He has a lot of sauce. He's wiggly, great handles, great footwork, excellent mechanics shooting the basketball off the dribble. I think he's a pretty solid catch and shoot guy. I'm not certain. I would have to do homework. But off the dribble, he's fantastic. He creates for himself. He's a really, really nice athlete. And he's still a puppy, so he's going to have to learn. But he's got some playmaking ability, some rebounding ability, definitely a slasher. He's not Duncan Robinson in the sense that he can only do one thing. Tyler Hero is a ball player, and he's the kind of guy who can step out on any basketball floor really and do what it is that he does. Typical guard in a way, but doesn't have typical skills. He's definitely an extraordinary, bouncy kind of guy, wiggly kind of guy. So I really like Tyler Hero. I think he's only going to continue to get better. He's streaky. He's the type of guy when he sees a couple shots go down, he gets hot, stays hot, one of those kind of guys. So if he continues to work on his confidence and other aspects of his game, I think all-star is in his upside. I think that's the type of upside he has. So, moving on. Dwayne Dedmon is the next name I see. Dwayne Dedmon is a center who could stretch the floor. Guy who's played a lot of places in this league. Sacramento. I think he's played for New York. If I'm not mistaken, he's played for Atlanta. He's been a lot of different places, and what he brings to each and every place is a big body that loves to rebound and likes to shoot the ball. He likes to shoot the three. You leave him out there, he's going to let him fly. So I really like Dwayne Dedmon if you need to stretch five. Role player at this stage in his career, but a reliable one. So PJ Tucker is the guy that I want to say next. And PJ Tucker is obviously a guy who just came off an NBA Finals appearance, and he was the sole guy in that Milwaukee lineup that was just terrorizing people. I mean, this guy, you put him on anybody, and he was terrorizing the hell out of them. He was one of the main reasons why the Milwaukee Bucks were able to have such an effective defense against the Phoenix Suns in the finals. He carried his load throughout the playoffs entirely. And, even though he was only in Milwaukee for 1 year, he made it his own. And he's definitely somebody who's going to be a part of what it is that they celebrate for many years to come. He was a part of that championship roster. So now he comes to Miami. He's taken on a similar role with this team. Unfortunately, he's one of the main power forwards, and I don't love that dynamic too much. Teams get away with putting him at the power forward. Obviously, we saw Phoenix, the team he was going up against, using a player of his stature and height and status as their main power forward in Crawford. What's his name? Man, I can't think of my man's name, but Phoenix Suns, power forward. They used him the same way that PJ Tucker was used, is going to be used in Miami, as the main power forward, the guy that they throw at the guys that are a little more talented than him, and just say, hey, go guard them and make your life hard on them. I don't really love that for him. I want him to be in a position that doesn't require him to have to take on such strong defensive assignments every night at this stage in his career. It's a role he's comfortable with. It's a role that they've given him for a very, very good portion of his career and everywhere he's gone. But when you have a team that is not as deep as the Miami Heat appear they are not, you don't want players to be at this stage in their career taking on this defensive assignments that he's going to have to take on. Players of his caliber, that is. You don't want to throw him at KD. You don't want to throw him at these type of guys. And that's exactly what's going to end up happening. He's going to be the guy you put on the guy that Bam Adebayo is not guarding. So, yeah, I don't love it. So that's where I'm going with that. I think PJ Tucker is kind of one of the reasons why I look at this roster and I say, yeah, it's not that he's a problem. It's just the role that they got him playing. So, moving on, KZ Okpala is a young player that they had. They drafted him a couple years ago. He had a good Olympics, if I'm not mistaken. He played for Nigeria. And, this is a small forward, if I'm not mistaken, with some upside. I don't know a whole lot about him, so I'm not going to sit up here and speculate or lie about it. But I know for a fact that I've seen him out there. He was drafted, maybe last year or the year before that. So, KZ Okpala, small forward, slasher. I'm pretty sure he has some athleticism, and I'll look to learn. Let's see. Gabe Vincent, I believe he played with the Boston Celtics a few years back. Kind of a back-of-the-bench guy, known for a three-point shooter. That's as much as I know. And then they got a couple guys down here that I'm not familiar with. Marcus Garrett, DJ Stewart, I believe those were rookies. Max Strauss is a guy they've had on the back of their bench for a while. I remember seeing him in Summer League last year. And, of course, Udonis Haslem, been in the elder statesman in the entire league. Let's just keep it real. Udonis Haslem is about 41 years old, and he's still playing basketball. Plays for the Miami Heat, and has always been a Miami Heat guy. Miami lifer, Miami native, Miami OG. This is a real Miami representative. When you think of Miami, one of the first names you're thinking of is him, Dwayne Wade, Rick Ross. Like, those are the names I'm thinking about. Scarface. I think that Udonis Haslem is one of the first people I think of when I think of the city of Miami. So that's saying a whole lot. Seriously. A lot of respect for Udonis Haslem around the league. And another name that I like on this team that they have is Omer Yurtseven. Woo, that dude is talented, man. I seen him in the Summer League. A center, 7-footer. Oh, man. Did this dude ball out? You definitely want to go check out some of his highlights. This is a guy that I heard some of the Spurs fans I talk about, the Spurs yesterday, and we were talking about how they drafted a kid by the name of Josh Primo. Looking at a lot of the things that people were saying, they were hoping that Yurtseven was the guy that they would get in San Antonio. He's a good player, man. This is a guy who can really, really shoot the ball. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting him mixed up with somebody else. Ignore that. But anyway, Yurtseven is just the same. Very, very talented player. Wow. I really, really was impressed by what I saw from him shooting the ball, the consistency that he had, the confidence that he displayed scoring the basketball. That was the most important thing. He just is relentless. If I'm not mistaken, this guy had some phenomenal scoring game overseas as well. He scored way up in the 70s, 80s, something ridiculous like that. He's just one of those guys who, has made his name overseas already, and he's coming over here bringing what it is that he's already got in the bank to the NBA. And From what I've seen, it's a whole lot of it. So the role should be there, being that this team is a bit shallow. They would be wise to try to work him in as their power forward even. I know they love PJ Tucker and defensively going to need him. But from what I've seen from Omer Yurtseven, he's a bucket getter. He's a repeated bucket getter. And if you're smart, you will find opportunities for him to play. And if he continues to play the way I saw him play, before too long, he'll be your starting power forward, your starting center. Well, not center, but power forward for sure. He can win that job. That's how talented Omer Yurtseven appeared to look in the Summer League. Now, I know the Summer League doesn't always translate. Some guys play in the Summer League, they're great, and then you see them in the regular season against real talent, and it's not that. I don't know if that's the case with this guy. But what I did see was enough for me to say, throw him out there, let's find out. You know what I mean? That's where I'm at with Omer Yurtseven. Throw him out there and find out if he can do that against good teams. Because he can certainly do it against lesser talent. That is without any doubt. So, and last but not least, I'm going to talk about the coach, Erik Spoelstra. Erik Spoelstra, one of the best coaches in the NBA, one of the best defensive minds out there. He's won championships with LeBron James, had to prove himself in that era. I remember the infamous bump that LeBron had against him. Not against him, but like one of their first games on national television. LeBron, they had called a timeout, and LeBron walked past him and bumped him. In my mind, that was LeBron testing them, the waters, trying to see what type of guy this is, trying to see if he can respect him, trying to see whatever. I think by the time he ended his tenure in Miami, he understood that bump was not phased. You didn't phase that guy, not that particular guy. This is somebody who has a lot of heart, shows it out there, thinks about his players first. And I think about someone who I would want to coach a young team. I would trust Erik Spoelstra to lead a bunch of young guys. He has that type of cachet at this stage. But he's not asked to do that this year. He's leading some older guys this year, and that's going to be just fine as well. They have enough out there, in my opinion, to compete for a championship. But I am not as high on Miami as the consensus is because of that power forward dynamic that they have. I just think they're leaning too much on the contract of Duncan Robinson at this stage. That contract could be divvied out to help them in other areas, especially since they can find his shooting elsewhere. Not necessarily as good of a shooter as he is, but at his price, you can live with a couple percentages off if that guy can do more than he can do. I'm not in love with Duncan Robinson on this team for that reason. If he were at a different price, straight, all good. But, they need a power forward. They need a defensive-minded guy. They need you know what they could use? They could use a guy like Marvin Bagley. They could use somebody like that. They could use someone of that caliber, not necessarily someone who's going to step in and be a star, but someone who can shot block, maybe hit a mid-range shot, dunk a basketball, catch a lob, and just provide another sense of defensive presence. They let Precious Achiuwa walk. That's another thing that stood out about the Miami Heat team that I wasn't so in love with. In the process of trying to get Kyle Lowry, they let a really good power forward prospect walk out the door, and I just thought that was a very, very bad decision. He goes up to Toronto, adds to what is going to be one of their biggest competitors, I think. I think Toronto's going to be a competitive team this year, and they just let them get stronger while simultaneously weakening their front court in that process. I just think that was a huge, huge mistake for a short-term dream, which is bringing in Kyle Lowry and trying to go after a championship. I don't think Kyle Lowry is going to be the difference between beating the Nets. But I do think not having a power forward can be the difference between getting out of the second round or not. And that is ultimately what I think they've done. Now, can they address that? Of course. They have the assets to address it. But will they do anything, or are they happy with what they got? And if so, the onus is on PJ Tucker to hold it down. Stay healthy for 82 games and playoffs, and guard all of the guys that they put on you to guard with the best of your ability. And that's ultimately just, I'm not leaning on that. If I'm betting my money on who's winning the championship, I'm not putting my money on whether or not Bam Adebayo can guard two players at once simultaneously, because that's essentially what's going to have to happen. If the power forward that PJ Tucker is going to be tasked with guarding is too damn talented, and the center is also too damn talented, which the East has some similar situations like that, it's going to be a situation where Bam's going to have to pick and choose who he's going to guard because PJ's not going to be too small to guard that player. PJ's not going to be talented enough to guard that player. So that's the issue with the Miami Heat. When it really comes down to it, yeah, they can score buckets, they can shoot threes, all that. But Bam Adebayo is going to have too much of a role on this team to be a defensive presence in multiple places at once. It's just going to be an impossible situation for him at times. And I see it coming. They're going to be putting Jimmy Butler on bigger players. They're going to be putting, if Oladipo's healthy, they're going to be putting him on bigger players. It's just going to be a nightmare trying to scheme. They're going to have to play a lot of zones and stuff like that. No. A lot of people love Miami to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. I got them getting to the second round. They're getting knocked off by Milwaukee. Once it's time for P.J. Tucker to stand in front of Giannis Antetokounmpo in whatever capacity, it's going to be a bad day. I'm just letting y'all know. Miami does not look good. They don't match up well against Milwaukee this year. There's no answer. I mean, I love Bam. Bam could be in front of Giannis to some degree, but again, they're going to have to figure out who they're going to let have what, because PJ's not guarding these guys. It's just not happening. So that's ultimately what it comes down to for the Miami Heat. They've spent a lot of money on something that's just not quite good enough. Kind of look at that, not necessarily like I look at Boston. I said the same thing about Boston, but it's a different energy. Miami's better than them, but they just need to tweak their roster just a little bit. If they can find a way to get a defensive power forward, they'll be fine. But they need that. So that's what I got, man. And two, I would look for them to be players in the buyout market, like in the middle of the season, because they do have a lot of players on this roster that either are past their prime. Like I didn't mention Markieff Morris, who won a championship with the Lakers. He's also on this roster. Guys that are kind of past their prime. Some of those guys can be waived and they can upgrade midway through the season after the trade deadline. Some of these guys that are going to get waived, they should go to Miami. And if Miami does enough good stuff in those moments, they can be right there where they need to be. So it's going to be about how the adjustments they make on this roster as the season progresses. If they think that this roster is good enough and they just go in the playoffs like this, it's not going to work. So that's what I think, man. But yeah, thank y'all for watching, man. My name is BDL44. This was the Miami Heat video. Appreciate y'all. Peace.